My daughter said it's better this way and left me at Shady Pines with a suitcase and expired toothpaste. I didn't cry. I calculated. She didn't even come inside. She stayed in the car, engine running, foot on the brake like I might chase her. Rolled down the window halfway and said, "They'll take good care of you, Mom," as if that made it kindness. I stood by the curb, clutching a duffel bag that wasn't even mine, watching her taillights blur into the sun. The driver behind her humped. She didn't look back. Not once. The receptionist smiled too hard. Said, "Welcome, Mrs. Jennings," even though I hadn't told her my name. My daughter must have sent paperwork ahead of time. Quiet arrangements. No discussion. No warning. Just a time and a place and a door that didn't open back up. Inside smelled like powdered soap and microwave vegetables. The kind of clean that never feels warm. A man with soft shoes wheeled past, looking straight through me. The walls were painted a cheery yellow that only made the sadness louder. The nurse on duty was nice, but too nice. The way you speak to someone you think might cry. I didn't. I nodded, took the key card, followed her to the room they picked without asking. Room 217. It already had a name on the door. Someone else's name, scratched out with labeled tape. "You'll settle in quick," the nurse said. I smiled. Settling wasn't the plan. Survival was. Not just mine, something bigger. Something slow. Something earned. They packed what they thought I'd need. 2 cardigans, a pair of slip-resistant socks, and a half-used bottle of rose lotion. No photos. No letters. No address book. The only note was a folded-up printout of the dining schedule. Sunday roast at noon. Baked fish on Thursdays. I remember staring at it like it might explain something. It didn't. Just told me I'd be fed and forgotten on a rotating basis. I sat on the bed, stiff and strange, and stared at the drawer where I used to keep my checkbook. That drawer wasn't here. That life wasn't here. They didn't just move me, they erased me. Patted their hands clean of the mess. Told themselves they'd done the right thing. "She'll be safer," I imagined her saying to her husband. It was time. Time for what? For me to stop being a person? The silence felt padded, like the whole place was wrapped in cotton to muffle the truth. I listened anyway. I heard the shuffles and sighs through the walls. Heard someone crying down the hall, quietly, into their pillow. Maybe not tonight. Maybe every night. I unpacked like a robot. Every folded shirt a bruise. Every missing item a memory pulled from under my feet. They didn't bring my Sunday earrings. Not even my Bible. Just the bare minimum. Like they were checking off a box. Like this was a task, not a mother. She used to sit on my lap and tug at my sleeves when she was scared. Now she couldn't look me in the eye. Said something about my memory slipping. Said I repeated myself. Said I couldn't be alone. Funny thing is, I lived alone just fine until she started coming around more. Checking in. Tidying up. Asking to help with my bills. Telling me how much I had, what I owed, when to eat. I started to notice my handwriting missing from things. Checks written in block letters. Passwords I never changed, suddenly not working. I wasn't confused. I was being handled. Pushed gently toward the edge. I didn't tell her I knew. No use. She'd already decided I was fading. That made it easier to erase me. She won't notice. That's what they always say, isn't it? About old people. She won't know. But I did. I knew. I just didn't shout about it. That's not my way. I come from a time when we didn't air things out loud. We folded our paint up in dish towels and kept stirring the pot. But that doesn't mean I don't feel. It doesn't mean I don't see. They thought I was shrinking. I wasn't. I was watching. I was waiting. The first night I didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling and counted the cracks. Tried to remember the last time someone hugged me without guilt. Without pity. Thought about the dog I never got to say goodbye to. Max. He used to bark when the doorbell rang, just once, then sit by the door wagging his tail like he believed the world was still good. I wondered if he waited by the door that day. I wondered if he's still waiting. The room had a call button, a bed rail, and a window that didn't open. Safety, they called it. I called it something else. I wasn't broken. I was calculating. Every silence on the phone. Every time she said rest when I said visit. Every check that bounced when I knew the account was full. She thought I was gone, but I wasn't gone. I was patient. That's what they forget about women like me. We've waited before, waited through war, through raising babies with fevers, through marriages that bent but didn't break. We know how to hold still without losing our grip. They thought the nursing home was my end. But no, it was the start. Not of something loud, not of something cruel, but something sharp, precise. I was going to get everything back. Not just my money, not just my dignity, but my name, my voice, my place at the table they quietly pulled away. I didn't need to scream. I just needed time. And now I had nothing but time. I worked. I cleaned. I fed them before I fed myself. Every night. Even when my stomach sounded like thunder. Even when my shoes were so worn the rain got through. I didn't complain. I just placed a little more rice on their plates and smiled like it was enough. They never knew. That's the way I wanted it. Children shouldn't feel the weight of sacrifice. They should sleep full and dream easy. So I made sure they did. I remember rocking my son when he was burning up, a cold rag on his head, my own body shaking with fever. I stayed up all night humming old lullabies, the ones my mother sang to me when times were even harder. By morning, his fever broke. Mine didn't, but that didn't matter. He was better. That was enough for me. I had 3 jobs once. One cleaned houses, one folded laundry at the motel, and the other was nights at the school cafeteria scraping trays. My hands always smelled like bleach and onions. I used to hide the cracks in my palms with gloves in church. Didn't want anyone feeling sorry for me. I wasn't sorry. I was proud. Proud I never missed a rent payment. Proud I kept my lights on. Proud I put both kids through school with packed lunches and polished shoes. I walked to work most days, not for exercise like folks do now, but because the car needed a new radiator and we couldn't afford it. That was okay. I wore an extra pair of socks when the snow came, dried them on the heater at night. I remember once pawning the bracelet my late husband gave me, silver with a little heart charm, just so my daughter could have a winter coat she liked. She smiled so big when she saw it. That smile warmed me more than any jewel ever could. We didn't have much, but I kept the house clean, curtains washed, floors shining. I'd sew patches onto their jeans so neatly you couldn't tell they were worn through. I clipped coupons, made stews that stretched for days, and reused every jar and butter tub like it was gold. I kept records, birthdays, doctor appointments, school plays. I was the calendar, the clock, the keeper of everything. I still remember the smell of their heads after a bath, that wet shampoo and warmth wrapped in towels. I used to tuck them in and whisper that they could be anything in the world. I meant it, every word. My dreams were big, just to see them happy, to see them stand tall. And they did. For a while they did. When my daughter got her first job, I stood outside her office just to watch her walk in. I didn't let her see me. I just wanted to look at her, standing straight in her blazer and shoes that didn't have holes. That was enough. That was mine. My son, when he made shift supervisor at the plant, called me crying, said he couldn't have done it without me. I believed him. Back then I did. I was the first call, the emergency contact, the one who picked up no matter what. And when my daughter had her baby, I slept on the hospital floor that first night because the waiting room was full. They told me to go home. I didn't. I stayed right there with a stiff neck and a full heart. I've held their secrets, paid their late bills, watched their dogs, picked up their prescriptions, kept silent when they yelled, cooked for them even when they showed up with nothing but laundry and bad moods. I thought that was love. I thought love was giving and giving and giving. I didn't expect anything back. Just presence. Just the occasional hand on my shoulder or a thank you that looked me in the eye. But those stopped too. Slowly, quietly, like someone turning a dial. They stopped coming by as often. Said they were busy. That work was hard. That the kids had soccer and piano and dentist appointments. I understood. I always understood. That was my mistake. It was little things at first. They stopped calling to ask how I was. They only called when they needed something. When the water heater broke. When the sitter canceled. When they were short on rent. They said things like, "You're good with money," and You're just sitting home anyway. As if my time wasn't mine. As if I hadn't earned a bit of rest. I told myself they didn't mean it that way. But they did. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being the mother and became the background, the helper, the one who'd always be there. Until they decided I shouldn't be. That I was too much. That I needed managing. That I wasn't safe alone. No discussion. No sit down. Just a ride, a bag, and a locked door behind me. They visit now sometimes. Rarely. Always with rushed smiles and distracted eyes. Checking their phones. Looking at their watches. They bring me cookies I can't eat and flowers that die too fast. They don't ask real questions. They don't want real answers. They say things like you're looking well. And we'll come back soon. But they don't. I sit in that room they picked out and think about all the rooms I cleaned for them. All the nights I stayed up sick, sewing buttons, boiling soup, whispering prayers. They don't remember. Or maybe they do. And that's worse, because remembering means they know. And they still chose this. I used to dream for them. I really did. I imagined my daughter giving speeches, my son buying a home with a porch just like mine. I dreamed of Sunday dinners, grandkids crawling under the table, laughter, togetherness. I never dreamed of this, of being folded away, of being referred to in the past tense while I was still breathing. I gave them everything. And now, I'm a task to manage, a checkbox, an old woman with a history they'd rather not dig through. But I remember. I remember everything. It started small. Almost nothing, really. A few missed calls. A few dinners postponed. I told myself it was just life. Kids get busy, I said. They have their own families now. I'm not the center anymore. And that's how it should be. I believed that. I wanted to believe that. So when my daughter stopped calling every Sunday, I didn't ask why. I just sat near the phone anyway, reading the same line of my book over and over, pretending I hadn't noticed. When she finally did call, her voice was rushed, like she was trying to end the conversation before it even started. You're good, right? Taking your meds, she'd ask, like she was ticking off a chart. Then, okay, gotta go. Love you. Click. I'd sit there with the phone still warm in my hand, trying to make her words stretch out longer than they were. She used to bring the grandkids over every week. They'd run through the house, knocking things over, pulling open cabinets looking for snacks. I loved it. The noise, the mess, the life. Then it turned into once a month. Then holidays. Then not even that. It's hard with school, she'd say. Or they've got practice and play dates. You know how it is. I'd nod, even though I didn't know. I just told myself it was okay. At least she was thinking of me. That's what I told myself. There were comments. Little ones. You're still sharp for now, she said once when I helped her remember where she left her keys. I laughed, tried to play along, but it stung. I wasn't forgetting things, not really. Just the occasional word or name. Nothing big, nothing dangerous. I still knew how to balance my checkbook. Still knew every birthday, every appointment. But they started treating me like glass. Like I might shatter if they spoke too loudly. Don't worry about that, Mom, she said when I asked about the electric bill. We've got it all under control. That's when I started to notice I wasn't the one in charge of my own life anymore. They'd made decisions without asking. Set up autopays. Forwarded mail. She started showing up with pill organizers, even though I already had one. Just making it easier, she'd say. I smiled, but inside I felt something shift. Like a key turning in a lock I couldn't see. My son came around even less. When he did, he talked about my will. Lightly, casually. Just in case, he'd say, sipping his coffee. You wouldn't want us fighting over stuff, right? I remember the way he looked around my living room when he said it. His eyes didn't stop moving. I told him I'd already written everything out years ago. Well, things change, he said. And you never know when. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I felt the cold draft in his silence. Still, I defended them. When my neighbor Helen said, they don't come around much anymore, do they? I laughed and said, they're busy. That's a good thing. I meant it. I wanted it to be true. When the nurse at my checkup asked if I had someone with me, I said no need. My daughter is just around the corner. She wasn't. She was out of state on vacation. Never told me. I saw it on Facebook, smiling in front of a beach I'd never seen. Still, I clicked like, pretended it didn't hurt. There was one night I couldn't sleep. I'd made a roast earlier that day, just like I used to. Potatoes, carrots, gravy the way they like it. I called to invite them over, even last minute. No answer. I wrapped it all up, let it cool, and put it in the fridge. It sat there for 3 days. Then I threw it out. I told myself it was just bad timing, that they didn't mean to forget. But I remembered every bite I didn't get to share. I noticed things missing from my purse. A check stub I didn't recognize. A prescription bottle moved from one shelf to another. My daughter started asking if I was feeling okay a little too often. She'd pat my hand and tilt her head like I was a child. "Don't worry about all that paperwork," she said. "Just relax, Mom." But I didn't feel relaxed. I felt watched, managed, rearranged. Then one afternoon I heard them. I wasn't supposed to. I was coming back from the hallway, quiet in my slippers. The door was ajar. They were in the kitchen, my son and daughter. Whispers, but not soft enough. "She won't even notice," my daughter said. "It's not like she reads the bank statements." My son chuckled. "It's for her own good. We're protecting her." That word, protecting. Like I was a stray dog. Like I didn't still have a voice. I stood there frozen. Not angry. Not yet. Just cold. Like I'd been dunked in water and left outside to dry. Still, I didn't confront them. That's the heartbreak of it. I still made excuses. Told myself maybe I misheard. Maybe they meant well. Maybe it was all just stress and love tangled up. I wanted to believe the best of them. Even as the warmth faded from their voices. Even as their visits turned into obligations. I wanted to believe I mattered. That I wasn't just a burden. That I was still their mother. Still the one who sang to them, fed them, carried them. But when I looked in their eyes, I didn't see reflection anymore. I saw distance, and I kept telling myself it was just the light. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just watered the peace lily near the window, the one I'd kept alive since my husband passed. My daughter showed up out of nowhere, wearing perfume too strong and a smile too tight. "Just for a drive," she said, jingling the car keys like we were going to get ice cream. I didn't ask questions. I didn't pack a bag. She said we'd be back by dinner. That's how easily I believed her. Even after all the little things, I still believed her. That's the part that aches the most. She drove with the windows cracked and music too loud, like we were pretending to be close again. She asked questions without waiting for the answers. "How's your knee? Still aching? You taking your pills?" I said yes, but she wasn't really listening. Her eyes stayed on the road. And when we pulled up to Shady Pines, I thought maybe she had an errand. Maybe someone she knew worked there. Maybe we were visiting someone. I didn't ask. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I trusted her. I really did. Then she parked, turned off the ignition, unbuckled her seatbelt, and looked at me with that same tight smile. "We just need to do a little paperwork. Just for a bit. Temporary." That word again. Temporary. Always the first lie. She opened the trunk and pulled out a bag I didn't recognize. It wasn't my suitcase. It wasn't even my scent. Just a mishmash of old clothes, slippers, and things I hadn't touched in years. "It's not forever," she said again, but her eyes darted away. That's when I knew. Not everything, but enough. I knew this wasn't about help. This was about removal. The front desk was expecting me. That's what chilled me. A pen already placed where my signature was supposed to go. My name printed on a little clipboard in bold letters. "Welcome, Mrs. Jennings," they said, smiling. Too much. Like I was a guest at a party I hadn't been invited to. The woman behind the counter handed me a folder. Inside, the rules, the meal schedule, the visitor hours. All printed. All official. I looked up at my daughter. She was staring at her phone. The room they showed me was beige. The curtains were beige. The flowers were plastic. Even the air smelled borrowed. Nothing lived in that room. Not even the bed looked like it had dreams in it. Just flat sheets and a thin pillow. I turned around to ask when we were leaving, but my daughter was already talking to the nurse, whispering, pointing. They nodded, smiled at me like I was a toddler about to throw a tantrum. "You're going to be very comfortable here," the nurse said. I wasn't. When I asked for my phone, my daughter said it was charging at home. When I asked for my checkbook, she said not to worry about it. When I asked what day she was picking me up, she just kissed my forehead and said, soon. She left before I could argue, before I could even think. I stood in the middle of that room, my room, they said, and felt every part of my life shrink down to the size of that suitcase I didn't pack. I called the bank that night from the facility phone. A young voice answered, polite but firm. After I verified my details, she paused. I'm sorry, Mrs. Jennings. This account is now restricted. It shows a power of attorney has been activated. I didn't understand. Not right away. I asked for clarification. She said my daughter now had control of everything. It's for your protection, the girl said. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from age. From rage I hadn't earned and couldn't use. I opened the drawers in the room. Empty. My Bible gone. The letters from my husband gone. Even the shawl my mother knitted before her hands gave out was missing. They packed what they thought I needed. Toothbrush, nightgown, slippers with worn soles. Nothing of who I was. Just items. Just enough to clothe me, not enough to comfort me. When I tried to explain to the staff, they smiled like I was being sweet. It takes time to adjust, they said. You might feel confused at first. I wasn't confused. I was clear. That's what made it worse. No one believed me. They watched me like I might forget where I was mid-sentence. They corrected my stories. They nodded too slowly. One nurse asked me what year it was, and when I answered without blinking, she smiled and said, good girl. Like I was 5. I stopped talking after that. There was no point. The phone in the hallway only took calling cards. My card was expired. I asked for another. They said my daughter would need to approve the purchase. I laughed. That cold, bitter laugh that doesn't sound like it comes from your own mouth. I wasn't just locked out of my house. I was locked out of my life. And they were smiling while doing it. The hardest moment came 3 days later. I called my neighbor from memory just to hear a voice that knew me before I was reduced to a room number. They changed the locks, she whispered. I saw the man doing it. Said it was for your safety. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat down and stared at my hands. The same hands that raised babies, sewed patches, carried casseroles to neighbors. Now they were empty. They didn't just move me. They buried me alive in politeness, wrapped me in paperwork, smiled as they stole. It's temporary, they said, but I could feel the permanence in their silence. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a liability, a loose end to be tied off with soft voices and beige walls. And the worst part? They acted like they were helping, like this was love, like this was care. But it wasn't. It was a quiet betrayal dressed up in clean linens and hand sanitizer. They thought they buried me. I was planting something. I remember the first night I stayed awake not from sadness, but from thinking. Real thinking. Not that foggy daydreaming they say comes with age. I mean needle-sharp memory, steady breath, full clarity. I lay in that hard bed, listening to the tick of the hallway clock outside, and I started making a list in my head. Names, dates, banks, phone numbers, every detail they thought I had forgotten, every password they tried to reset. I remembered it all, not just out of spite, but out of duty, to myself, to the woman I had been before they shut the door. By the next morning, I had asked the nurse for a notepad. She smiled, thinking it was for crossword puzzles or grocery lists that never get filled. I thanked her and waited until my roommate fell asleep. Then I started writing, not with anger, not with panic, with precision. Name, Marissa Lynn Jennings. Daughter, power of attorney signed, May 14th without witness. My signature, forged. Bank account, Midwest Family Credit Union, ending in 09. Last known balance, $18,772.23. I wrote until my fingers ached. Then I kept going. There was strength in every stroke of that pen. I wasn't screaming. I was writing. I remembered Monica. She used to live 2 houses down from me, back when the neighborhood still had block parties and fresh pies on windowsills. Her mother and I used to swap tomato plants and gossip about church. Monica had grown up to be a lawyer. Real estate and elder rights, if I remembered right. The last time I saw her, she'd given me her card and said, "If you ever need anything, call me directly." I still had that card, tucked inside a book of poems on my nightstand. Or so I thought. Of course, they hadn't packed it. But I remembered the firm's name. I wrote it down too. The days at Shady Pines moved like honey, slow, sticky, pretending to be sweet. The staff meant well, most of them, but they'd already made up their minds about me. I was old, fragile, maybe even slipping. I let them believe it. There's power in being underestimated. They'd leave papers on desks while they turned away. They talked too openly in the hallway. I started noticing things. Who buzzed in? What codes they used? When deliveries came and where they were stored. I wasn't bored, I was watching. They gave me a shared activity calendar. I didn't attend a single thing. Instead, I sat by the window in the library room and kept writing, sometimes copying, sometimes planning. I found a stray folder of patient info left in the printer once. I didn't touch it, just noted the names. Who had visitors? Who didn't? Who the social workers paid extra attention to? I started mapping the patterns. Everything they thought I was too old to care about. Once, I overheard a call. The front desk lady, young, with pink nails and a habit of chewing gum, was whispering into the receiver. "No, she hasn't asked about the house. The daughter said she's not lucid most days." Yeah, I have it in writing. That word again, lucid. It bounced around in my chest like a marble in a tin can. I looked right at her as I walked past. She flinched. I didn't blink. I started signing my name over and over at night, just to keep the muscle memory alive. They said I shook. I didn't. My hands were steady. The only thing trembling was their plan. Once I got moving, I asked for books on elder law. They gave me romance novels. I smiled and said thank you. I hid the books under my bed and wrote down every question I needed answered. I wasn't loud. I didn't throw fits. That's not my way. I said please and thank you and tucked my anger in like a napkin under my chin. They thought I was eating their lies, but I was preparing something of my own. Steady, measured, quiet power. That's how women like me survive. That's how we rise. One night, I borrowed a pen from the night nurse and kept it. I used it to address an envelope to Monica's firm, in the only handwriting that's ever been mine. I tucked it under my mattress, waiting for the moment I could ask a visitor, any visitor, to drop it in the mail for me. I didn't care if it took weeks. I knew how to wait. I've waited through childbirth, war, and grief. This was just another season. They thought they'd strip me bare, but I was building something. Not revenge, not yet. Just roots. Quiet ones. Deep ones. They couldn't see it, but I could feel it. A slow, steady bloom beneath all that silence. Every nurse who patted my hand like I was melting. Every administrator who smiled a little too widely. Every visit that never came. All of it was water on the seed. They thought they buried me. I wasn't buried. I was planting. Monica walked in wearing navy blue and purpose. No hesitation in her step. No sympathy in her eyes, just respect. She hadn't changed much. Same firm jawline, same calm that made people lower their voices without being told. She didn't hug me, and I was grateful for that. Instead, she said, "You're not crazy. You're ready." And I felt the air shift in that room, like something locked was finally unlatched. She came because of the letter, the one I wrote with shaking fingers and unshaken resolve. She said she read it twice. Every sentence sounded like the woman I used to know. Sharp, precise, and tired of being quiet. I didn't smile. Not yet. There was too much work to do. She sat across from me at the tiny table in the activity room, while a puzzle sat unfinished between us. She spread out the forms, emergency orders, medical reviews, a notarized letter challenging the power of attorney. She'd already done half the work before she stepped inside the door. "I believed you the moment I read your handwriting," she said. "The rest was just proving it on paper." The next 2 weeks moved fast, faster than anything else had since they placed me in that beige room and told me to adjust. A medical evaluation confirmed my competency. Clear memory, solid reasoning, no signs of dementia. That's what the doctor wrote. I asked for a copy. framed it in my mind. Monica submitted the paperwork to the court the same day. An injunction followed. Immediate suspension of all access to my financial accounts. The house? Frozen. No more repairs. No more silent signatures. No more pretending it was theirs. The staff stopped calling me dear after that. Started using my full name again, Mrs. Jennings, with a little stiffness in their tone. Like they weren't sure if I was still fragile or someone they should be nervous around. I didn't correct them. Let them feel what they needed to feel. I had spent months feeling powerless. Let them spend a week feeling unsure. When my daughter found out, she came storming in, face tight, voice high, demanding answers. But this time, I wasn't the one fumbling. Monica met her in the hallway with a copy of the court's ruling. You no longer have any authority here, she said, calm as a lake. My daughter looked at me, really looked at me, and saw that I wasn't asking for permission. I was watching her the way she used to watch me when she was little and in trouble. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry, just said, go home, Marissa. You'll get a letter. And I turned away. I gathered my things in silence. There weren't many. Some clothes, a pair of glasses, and the notebook I filled with every detail they thought I'd forget. I didn't pack in a rush. I folded everything neatly. I thanked the nurses who had been kind. And to the ones who hadn't, I nodded. Not out of politeness, but because I was done with all that now. Let them wonder how much I knew. Let them wonder how much I planned. Monica stood by the door as I walked out. No fanfare. No dramatic music. Just slow, steady steps. My cane tapped like a metronome. Not frailty rhythm. I passed the welcome sign they used to point out when guests arrived. Shady Pines, where comfort meets care. I let the door swing closed behind me. That slogan never suited me. I didn't want comfort. I wanted control. And now I had it. Outside, the sky was gray but wide, like it had space for me again. Monica's car waited by the curb, the same place my daughter had dropped me off months before. Only now I wasn't being left. I was leaving. Big difference. I left with less than I came with, except I had everything. My name, my rights, my house, my voice. No one gave it back to me. I took it, piece by piece, document by document, truth by truth. I didn't shout, didn't slam doors, just did what I've always done. The quiet work, the strong work, the kind that doesn't show its power until it's already done. They didn't see me coming. That's the beauty of it. They thought I was slipping, fading, but I wasn't. I was steadying, rooting myself. They underestimated the woman who once fed them with empty cupboards and carried them through sickness on no sleep. The woman who balanced bills, wiped noses, and never asked for thanks. That woman was still here. Older, yes, but wiser, sharper, done with waiting. As we drove away, Monica asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked out the window, watched the building shrink behind us. No, I said. That's not my kind of justice. She nodded. She understood. Justice didn't need handcuffs. It needed truth, and space, and dignity. And I had all three now. They took my keys. I sold the door. Not with a bang. Not with screaming. I didn't throw dishes or send angry letters. I didn't even raise my voice. That would have given them too much. No. I did it all in silence with dotted lines, notarized stamps, and a closing signature in my own clean handwriting. That was my revenge. Not fire, not fists. Just the cold weight of finality. The kind that comes when a woman stops waiting for her children to change and changes everything around them instead. The house had been mine since 1979, bought with my husband's life insurance and years of slow saving. Every wall held a memory. First steps, birthday candles, late night talks on the porch when the air was thick with summer and teenage tears. And I let it all go. Not out of grief, not out of haste, but out of knowing I deserved peace more than I needed ghosts. I called a realtor the week after I left Shady Pines. A woman who listened, didn't question my age, and knew how to sell without spectacle. I told her I wanted it quiet, clean, and final. She understood. Women like us don't need open houses. We need closure. I signed the deed away while sipping chamomile tea. No shaking hand. No doubt. The check came in. and I deposited it into an account only I had access to. One that didn't need a cosigner. One that wouldn't be touched without my voice on the line. I bought a small cottage by the water with sunlit windows and not a single shared wall. I changed the locks, changed my number, changed the name on every document back to my full maiden name, the one I hadn't used in 60 years. Not because I didn't love my husband, but because I needed something that belonged to me and me alone. I mailed the legal notices, certified mail, return receipt requested, no birthday cards tucked inside, no explanations, just the facts. The power of attorney was void, the accounts were closed, and the property was sold. My daughter tried to call. My son sent a long message that started with "we didn't mean to" and ended with "please call me." I didn't. That phone number didn't belong to me anymore. Neither did their guilt. Let them sit with it. Let it stew in the empty air where I used to stand and forgive. They showed up one day. I wasn't surprised. I'd expected it eventually. I was out on the porch, the wind rustling the edge of my robe, a teacup warm in my hands. It was jasmine, a little bitter, a little sweet. I saw their car pull up and park just far enough away to look unsure. Like they didn't know if they had the right to be here anymore. They didn't. They walked toward the gate. It was locked. They tried to wave. I didn't move. I just took another sip. My daughter called out, "Mom," like she was saying it for the first time in years. My son added, "We just want to talk." But I'd heard all their talking before. Talking is what got me locked in a room with plastic flowers and borrowed air. I wasn't going back to that. They stood there, two adults with too many excuses and not enough truth, while I remained still. I didn't yell. I didn't scold. I didn't cry. I just watched them through the steam of my tea. Eventually, they ran out of words. Their faces cracked with confusion, then regret, then something close to panic. Like they were realizing, too late, that mothers can leave too. Not with suitcases, but with silence. I stood up once the tea was finished. Not quickly, not with drama, just a soft rise, a pause, and then I went back inside. I closed the door gently. No slam. No click loud enough to echo. Just a firm end. They stayed outside a little longer. I heard their feet shuffle. Heard the car door open, then close. I didn't look again. That part of the story was over. Inside, the light fell just right across the kitchen floor. I smiled, not because I won, but because I finally felt free. No more locked drawers. No more lies hidden behind Sunday dinners. No more waiting by the phone for calls that came with conditions. Just space. Just quiet. Just me. Revenge isn't always rage. Sometimes it's a clean counter, a warm drink, a gate that stays closed. They took my keys, so I sold the door. They called. I didn't pick up. Not the first time, not the 15th. My phone blinked for weeks. Little red lights like begging eyes. Voicemail full. I never listened. Not once. I didn't need to hear the apologies they rehearsed in their mirrors. I could imagine every word. We were just trying to help. It got out of hand. You have to understand. But I didn't have to understand. That was the difference now. Understanding used to be my full-time job. I used to twist myself into 100 versions just to make things easier for them. To make them feel better about taking more than they ever gave. Those days were over. They sent cards too. Folded pieces of guilt pretending to be affection. Gold script, soft pastels, words like forever and family. I stacked them in a drawer. Never opened a single one. Not out of bitterness, but because I no longer felt the need to respond to performances. They had every chance when my hands were tired and my heart still open. Now the curtain had closed. There was no encore. Flowers came. Big arrangements. Lilies, roses. Things I used to love before they reminded me of hospitals and obligation. They came in vases with glittered bows and pre-written notes. "We miss you. Let's talk. You're still our mother." I let them wilt on the porch. Watch the petals fall like soft confessions. When the delivery man finally asked if he should stop bringing them, I just nodded. He looked relieved. Even old friends got involved. Helen, from down the street, called and asked if I'd at least meet them for coffee. I told her I was drinking tea these days. My voice was soft but firm. She didn't ask again. People think forgiveness is a light switch, something you just flip back on. But they don't understand the power in not flipping it, in knowing you could, but choosing your own quiet instead. That's the power they never taught us growing up. That we don't have to stay reachable. I didn't hide. I just lived. Simpler, smaller, but deeper. I walked every morning before the sun got too sharp. Same path down the gravel road, past the cattails, past the dock. I'd wave at the same dog, tied to the same fence, who barked like he'd forgotten me every day. I grew herbs in mismatched pots on my windowsill, mint, rosemary, thyme. Nothing fancy, just enough to add flavor to what I made for myself. I cooked small meals, read old books, sat in the rocking chair with no one to impress and no reason to explain why I smiled when the wind changed. There were moments, small ones, when their shadows passed through my thoughts. A laugh I remembered, a birthday cake I baked, a drawing one of them made with crooked letters that said, "I love Mom." I let those memories come, and I let them go. Like smoke. I didn't chase them, and I didn't curse them either. They belonged to another season, and I wasn't in mourning anymore. One night, the power went out. Just a flicker of thunder and darkness. I lit a candle and made tea on the gas burner. Sat there in silence, just me and the warm glow. I thought, this is peace. No noise. No pressure. No one asking what I'm doing next, or why I don't answer the phone. Just the soft hiss of water, the creak of the chair and breath, mine, steady and earned. They cried. I closed the window. Not in cruelty, in choice. They had my whole life to knock on that door while it was still open, to hold my hand when it was tired, not just when it was gone. I gave them everything, not things, but time, patience, and belief. And when they chose to believe I was fading instead of fighting, that was their loss. I stopped explaining that. A neighbor's daughter stopped by once, just to bring jam. Young girl, didn't know the whole story. She said, "You remind me of a lighthouse. Quiet but strong." I smiled and said, "That's what happens when you've been through storms." She asked if I had any family nearby. I said, "Not anymore." And I meant it. Family isn't about DNA. It's about presence, kindness, accountability. And I had enough of that in my own skin now. They may still try. On birthdays, on holidays, when guilt grows louder than comfort. But I don't owe them a seat at my table just because they finally noticed it's empty. I eat alone now and I eat well. I drink my tea hot. I walk with intention. And I don't wait for the doorbell, because peace isn't something they can return to me. It's something I found when I stopped waiting for them to give it. Thank you. You've guided this beautifully, and yes, I'm ready to complete section 9. The reflection, maybe I wasn't the burden after all in the Granny's Truths format. Below is the final section, written in first person, gentle and whole. At 800 words with all emotional anchors and story rules followed. Maybe I wasn't the burden after all. That thought came to me one morning while slicing apples for no reason at all. No dinner party, no grandchild visit, no recipe to follow. Just the sound of the knife on the wood and the smell of fresh fruit. I wasn't performing for anyone anymore. And I found that I still did all the little things, but now only for myself. I bought tulips from the farmer's market, not because someone was coming over, just because I liked the way they leaned toward the light. I set them by the window and smiled every time I passed. No flowers came, so I bought my own. I joined a book club down by the library. Not a loud group, just a few women like me, soft-spoken, strong-eyed. We didn't compete to speak. We just sat and let each other finish full thoughts. We read slow stories and brought warm snacks. I made my mother's bread, the one with cracked crust and a dash of clove, the one that filled a room with memory. They asked for the recipe, and I shared it with a folded napkin and a wink. That felt good, giving something without it being taken. I started sending postcards, not to anyone in particular, just short notes to old addresses, made-up names. The sky was pink today, like sherbet and silence. I didn't expect a reply. That was the beauty of it. Words given with no need for return. Just joy in the giving, like whispering to the wind and trusting it would carry something somewhere. My days became smaller but never empty. Mornings with tea and the newspaper. Afternoons pulling weeds from the garden I now called mine. No more beige walls. No more staff with soft pity in their voices. Just me and the green things that kept growing, no matter how many winters had passed. The basil came back strong this year. So did I. I don't think about them every day now. Sometimes, yes, when a certain song plays. When I pass a pair of shoes that look like the ones I once bought for my son. But the pain doesn't stick the way it used to. It arrives, tips its hat, and leaves quietly. Like a guest who knows the rules. I let it come. I let it go. I no longer feel the need to explain what happened. Not to strangers, not to the mirror. I was there. I lived it. And that's enough. The truth no longer burns. It just lives alongside me. Like a scar that no longer aches when the rain falls. Sometimes I wonder if they've changed. If they sit in their own silence and wish they'd done things differently. But I don't dwell there. That's their journey. Mine is lined with lavender and fresh paint. With cardinals who nest outside my window and the soft scratch of pen on paper. With bread that rises. With light that stays. I'm not angry anymore. That's not to say I forget. But I've chosen a different kind of remembering. One that honors me, not the harm. I remember the strength it took to walk out. The stillness it took to stay out. The peace I earned not by forgiveness, but by forward motion. I used to think I had to be needed to be loved. That usefulness was my value. That if I wasn't cooking, fixing, comforting, I was nothing. But now I sit at my table with a full plate and no one to serve, and I feel more whole than I ever did in a crowded room. This time, I ate at my table, alone and free. The sun feels different now. Warmer somehow. It kisses my shoulders as I walk the garden path, the herbs brushing against my legs, the flowers leaning in like they know I'm listening. And I am. I listen to the bees, to the wind, to the sound of my own steps, steady and mine. I used to think silence was loneliness, but it's not. It's space. Space to breathe. Space to belong, even to yourself. They thought I needed them to survive. But the truth is, I needed distance to remember who I was. I was never the burden. I was the root, the keeper, the one who held it all together. And when they let go, they didn't set me free. I did that. No photos on the walls now. Just windows. Just light. Just me. And that's more than enough. Would you like me to now begin with section 1, the hook? They thought I was done, written in the exact style and format you've asked for, 5,000 characters, first person, emotionally anchored?